again, we're looking at knowing God. We've looked at theologically knowing God. And now we're looking at knowing God relationally, which is an acknowledgement of Him in life. We read in Proverbs 3 and verse 6, "In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths." To acknowledge is to recognize. That is, in everything, recognize God. It means to take notice. Take notice of God. It also means to express the Lord, to declare the Lord. So in all things, we are to recognize the Lord. We're to take notice of God. And then we're to declare the Lord. Again, it's the opposite of oblivion of God, which is a forgetfulness of God, a failure to recognize the Lord. It's living as if God did not exist. And we will do that if we're not careful. So a relational knowledge of God is knowing by personal experience His relationship to us. Again, it goes beyond theologically. It's knowing by personal experience His relationship to us. It is also knowing by personal experience His activity in our lives. And we saw last week also it consists of a meaningful communication with God in our lives. Today we want to look at that a relational knowledge of God involves a personal awareness of God's presence. And I'm not just speaking of His omnipresence. God is everywhere. We're speaking of His gracious presence in our lives. And we need to always be aware God is with me. God is with me. All through the Scriptures, we see God giving promise to individuals of His presence. There's the promise of His presence to Isaac. Notice over in the book of Genesis, chapter 26. Genesis 26. And verse 3. "Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham my father." So the Lord promises several things there to Isaac. But the foundation of it is, I will be with thee. He also made promise to his father Abraham, Isaac's father. Notice in Genesis 26, verse 24. "And the Lord appeared unto him the same night, and said, I am the God of Abraham, thy father." This is His promise to Isaac. "Fear not, for I am with thee, and will bless thee, and multiply thy seed for Abraham's sake." So, God's promise of his presence. We see this to Jacob in Genesis 28, verse 15. And behold, I am with thee, and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again unto this land. For I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of. Notice, I am with thee, and then notice those two words, all places. I will keep thee in all places. I am with thee, and I am with thee in all places. We see this promise, of course, was made to Moses in the book of Exodus, chapter 3, verse 12, and he said, certainly I will be with thee. Certainly, assuredly, I will be with thee. Exodus 33. Exodus 33, verse 14. And he said, my presence shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest. Notice also in Deuteronomy chapter 31. Deuteronomy 31 and verse 6. Be strong and of good courage, fear not, nor be afraid of them. Here's why. For the Lord thy God, he it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. And over in Leviticus chapter 26, we see the promise to Israel as a nation. Leviticus 26 and verse 12. And I will walk among you, and will be your God, and ye shall be my people. Notice over in Joshua, he gives this promise to Joshua. Joshua chapter 1. And verse 5. There shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. And we see he gives this promise again to Joshua in Joshua 3, verse 7. We see in the book of Judges, chapter 6, verse 16, this is to Gideon. And he said unto him, O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said unto them, surely I will be with thee, and thou shalt smite the Midianites as one man. Then he gave this promise to Jeremiah. We're in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 8, Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 19, Jeremiah 30, verse 11. So over and over again, God promises his presence. He gave this promise to Paul. Notice in Acts chapter 18. Acts chapter 18. And verse 10. For I am with thee, and no man shall set on thee to hurt thee, for I have much people in this city. Man, the child of God who is going to serve God, and each one of these individuals serve the Lord, have this promise: I will be with thee. We are to acknowledge God's presence. That's what strengthens us to go on. It's an absolute necessity. This presence of God. It is the presence that David spoke of in Psalm 23 and verse 4. It is the presence that we read of over in Isaiah chapter 43 and verse 2. When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee. Also notice verse 5. Fear not, for I am with thee. Fear not, for I am with thee. So it is the presence of God with His own. Now again, God is omnipresent in a general way. In a general way, He's with everyone just by His omnipresence. But this is a special presence. This is the gracious presence of God that the saved experience. It's the presence of God with us as who He is, with us as who we are. So it is God with us, the Creator, with the creature, or with the creation. It is God the infinite, with you and I, the finite. It is God the ruler, with you and I as the subjects. It is God in His power, with us in our weakness. It's God in His knowledge, with us in our ignorance. It's God in His holiness, with us in our sinfulness. God in His riches, with us in our poverty. God in His sufficiency, with us in our need. So it's God for everything we need. And He says, I am with thee. Now this relational knowledge of God knows this truth. God is with me. He or she knows it. They feel the presence of God. That's knowing God in a relational way. You know theologically that He's with you. But now you can feel His presence. That should not be an every now and then feeling. That should not be just an every now and then thing. That should be every day. That should be all the time. That's what it means to know God relationally. So it's the presence of God as a reality in our life. Notice in Psalm 16, Psalm 16 and verse 8. This is a messianic psalm. We know that because of the way it's quoted in the New Testament by Peter and by Paul. So it has application to Christ. It's not limited to Christ. It also has application to David, and it also has application to us. But being a messianic psalm means that it goes beyond that, and it has application to Christ. And in Psalms, with that in mind, Psalm 16:8, I have set the Lord always before me. Only Christ could say that. I have set the Lord always before me. Because He is at my right hand, that's His presence, I shall not be moved. So, again, Peter, in Acts 2, verse 25, takes these words and applies them to Jesus Christ. I have set the Lord always before me. That is, he always acknowledged the Lord. He could always see the Father. And Jesus is our example of living life, seeing and feeling and experiencing the presence of God. That's a relation, that is a part of a relational knowledge of God. For relational knowledge of God, you have to acknowledge God. You have to acknowledge God is present. You have to experience the presence of God. Jesus Christ always. You and I don't always. But Jesus Christ always saw the Father. Didn't matter what happened, he could see the Father. Everywhere he went, every place, he could see the Father. Every condition that he found himself in, he could see the Father. Every company. He was with a variety of people throughout his earthly ministry. But whatever company he was in, he could see the Father. Whatever circumstance he was in, he could see the Father. Jesus Christ came to do the work of God. God had a work for him to do, had a duty. And in every single work, I have set the Lord always before me. He could see the Lord. Now we fail. We don't always see the Lord before us. But he says, I have set the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand. So we knew the presence of God. So though we fail, know this, we do not do this always. This is our privilege, to see God with us in our life. It's not only our privilege, it's our duty. We're to acknowledge God. In all the cares of life, we're to see God. We have a tendency to see our cares before we see God. We have a tendency to view God through our cares. But that wasn't Christ. In all cares, we're to see God. Again, we're to begin with God. In all trials, we're to see God. In all afflictions, we're to feel, again, and acknowledge his presence. In all storms, in all oppositions, in all problems, in all difficulties, in all obstacles, we can see him. And that is a relational knowledge of God. And we see him as our rock. We see him as our refuge. We see him as our fortress, our shield, our help. We see him as he is. We see him for who he is. And all of these things. So what we see of God is to, as we've said many times, is to overshadow everything else. Our tendency is we let life overshadow God. And we let all the things of life and all the matters of life to overshadow God. But it's to be just the opposite. We're to see God. God's presence is to be felt so strongly that it overshadows everything else. So, seeing him, God's presence, is how we're able to rise above. Again, in all these promises that we read earlier of God promising his presence to his people, it was so that they could rise above something and serve him. And that's how you rise above. You have to be able to see God, which is faith. You have to be able to feel his presence, which again is faith. This is how you endure, by seeing God. You can endure anything if you can see God in it all. And this was Christ. It's how we become useful. Again, he gives this promise to a variety of his servants. This is how they would be useful in the Lord's service. You have to acknowledge God is here. God is with me. It's how we become a blessing to others as well, by seeing God. So we have the acknowledging God, acknowledging God's presence. Now think about the atmosphere of the presence of God. The atmosphere that's created by the presence of God. Again, a relationship with God, knowing God in a relational way, is living life seeing God, feeling God, experiencing the presence of God. And the presence of God creates an atmosphere around us. Again, if we go back, we read this verse earlier, Genesis 26. Genesis 26, verse 3. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee. Now, notice the atmosphere that this creates. And will bless thee. I will be with thee and bless thee. It creates an atmosphere of God's blessing. An atmosphere of God's assurance, because he tells him what he would do. So there's an atmosphere of the blessing of God. No matter what else is going on, if we're living aware of God's presence, we realize, I'm blessed. I'm blessed. Then notice over in Exodus 33. Exodus 33. Verse 14. And he said, my presence shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest. His presence creates an atmosphere of rest. What rest means here is not just lounging, but it speaks of security. It speaks of security. It's hard to rest if you don't feel secure. It speaks of contentment. It speaks of assurance. All is well. It's basically a stillness before God. It is the realization of God's presence that we find rest. That we find rest. So his presence creates an atmosphere of blessing. His presence creates an atmosphere of rest, contentment. Notice over in Deuteronomy chapter 20. Deuteronomy 20. Verse 1. When thou goest out to battle against thine enemies, and seest horses and chariots, and a people more than thou, be not afraid of them. And he tells them why. For the Lord thy God is with thee, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Verse 4. For the Lord your God is he that goeth with you, to fight for you against your enemies, to save you. So God's presence creates an atmosphere of blessing, creates an atmosphere of rest, and here we see it creates an atmosphere of confidence. He says, when you see their horses, when you see their chariots, don't be afraid. Be confident. Be confident in me. In Genesis chapter 26 again, Genesis 26, verse 24. And the Lord appeared unto him the same night, and said, I am the God of Abraham thy father. Fear not, for I am with thee, and will bless thee. There it is again. And multiply thy seed for my servant Abraham's sake. Here we see it creates a atmosphere of courage, God's presence. Fear not. And we see this continually. Notice in Isaiah chapter 41, Isaiah 41 and verse 10. Fear thou not, the reason, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, I will help thee, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. In other words, I will be with thee, and I am everything you need. In Isaiah 43. Isaiah 43, verse 5. Fear not, for I am with thee. There it is again. Fear not, and then the promise of God's presence. And you see the same thing over in Jeremiah chapter 46, verse 28. It creates an atmosphere of courage. So it creates an atmosphere of blessing. It creates an atmosphere of rest. It creates an atmosphere of confidence. It creates an atmosphere of courage. We don't have to work these things up within ourselves. All we have to do is recognize the presence of God. And there's rest, there's confidence, and there's courage. In the book of Judges, chapter 2, book of Judges, chapter 2, verse 18. And when the Lord raised them up judges, then the Lord was with the judge, and delivered him out of the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge. For repented the Lord because of their groanings, by reason of them that oppressed them and vexed them. And then notice over in Jeremiah chapter 1, Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 8. Be not afraid of their faces, for I am with thee, to deliver thee. It's like that judge was raised up to deliver thee. So it is here, to deliver thee. I am with thee to deliver thee. Verse 19. And they shall fight against thee, but they shall not prevail against thee. Here's why. For I am with thee, saith the Lord, to deliver thee. So in here we see it creates an atmosphere of victory. The presence of God assures that. There's the atmosphere of growth. In 1 Samuel 3, verse 19, we see the Lord was with Samuel and he grew. And the presence of God creates an atmosphere of growth. It creates an atmosphere of prosperity or flourishing. Notice in 2 Kings, chapter 18. 2 Kings 18, verse 7. And the Lord was with him, and he prospered. Whithersoever he went forth, he flourished. When we recognize God's presence, there is a spiritual flourishing. Then over in Psalm 46, verse 1. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help. Present help. It creates an atmosphere of help. And then lastly in Psalm 16, verse 11. Thou wilt show me the path of life. In thy presence is fullness of joy. In thy presence is fullness of joy. So it creates an atmosphere of joy. So in the presence of God, there is blessing, there is rest, there is confidence, there is courage, there is victory, there is growth, there is prosperity, there is help, and there is joy. And to know God relationally, you cannot separate that from the presence of God. Seeing, knowing, feeling, experiencing the presence of the Lord. Also, a relational knowledge with God, of course, involves fellowship with God, and we'll pick up there next week. Let's look to the Lord. Heavenly Father, again, we thank you,